Welcome to another episode of The Green Dream. I am with Jason Mann and one and only Larry Ryan from Ryan Lawn and Tree. We are here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and this is one of several branches. In an ideal world, you're never not marketing for new customers, so you should never not be not marketing for new employees.
Until recruiting, hiring, and keeping great people, not people, great people becomes your number one priority. Those of you who don't do that will never have a consistent number two priority. And so that's been our mantra now for 40 years. And I think it's why our company is unique, is because we have an incredible amount of very good talent.
Hiring great people, finding great people, retaining great people, it's difficult. Think about the NFL and the amount of money that they put in studying people and all the interviews and all the things that they do and how much they miss on people. Why does a Patrick Mahomes get drafted 9 places down than a Mitch Trubisky? How does that happen?
Do you think that leadership is trainable?
I've always said, and I'm really open about this, I'm not a great leader. I have a pretty good vision of where we're going. Behind every weakness, there's a strength, and we have to see that in ourselves. There was an inscription over the entrance to Harvard. I'd heard this years ago, and I think of Socrates. But it says, know thyself. And we have to live a truthful life with ourselves. We have to know it. It took me a long time to realize you're never better than your people.
It's about servant leadership. That's what kind of leaders we want to be.
We're in people growing business.
Guys, welcome to the Green Dream podcast.
Thanks, Luke. Good morning.
Tell me, how many branches are we at already today?
We have 5 branches outside of Kansas City, and then in Kansas City, we have 6 different locations.
Wow. And how many total employees?
A little over 500. Everybody's full-time. That's one of the unique things about our company, full-time, full benefits, which we think is terribly important, Luke, because we want people to be able to raise a family and have dignity. And you cannot do that with a seasonal job.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 37 years in business?
We just finished our 38th season if we work there, because we started
season.
Yeah, March 1st, 1987.
To sustain that amount of time in business, it obviously takes growth, it takes people, it takes leadership. And so, for those that are going to be listening to this podcast that are not at 500 employees and the revenue that you were at and the branches that you were at, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest things that contributes to that growth is the people. Watching the About video that you guys just put out, it was very obvious that people are really what makes this company what it is today. And almost, you're coming up on almost 40 years. That doesn't happen just by accident or poor leadership. And so you guys are doing a lot of things that are different than probably 98% of the people in this industry. So I want to talk a little bit about some of those things. First off being that you guys are an ESOP, employee owned. You guys have been employee owned for...
Well, we started in 1998.
So we 10 years in?
Yes, because started in 87, so 11 years in, and then we became 100% fully owned and 2018, 20 years later.
Wow. And talk to me about the purpose behind that and kind of what got your mind rolling behind that, because I promise you there will be people in the comments of this that are going to say, I would never do that, or how would you ever trust employees to run the business as good as you? And so for those that are going to be listening to this that have never thought about that or are going to immediately put, I can't do that, what's the thought process behind that? What took you down that road?
Look at Jason sitting beside me. He has a degree in horticulture, a degree in accounting. Would he have come here if he didn't feel like there was something for us? And I say a degree in horticulture, specialized in turf over at Oklahoma State. I grew up on a farm, and farmers almost always leave the farm to their kids, right? And otherwise, why would we work so hard for our dads for nothing, oftentimes, if you didn't see something in it for you? But even in high school, Luke, if I've grown up with my father, I know how to grease the tractor, fuel it up, hook to the implement, and I know what field needs to be, whatever needs to be done to it at a certain time. You're second generation. You learn it that way. In our industry, most people aren't second generation. We're just starting to get to the point where Jason doesn't have either of his sons here in Oklahoma. They're going to follow him, but if they do, they have a huge advantage over other people. So it just seemed like the right thing to do. The other thing is, well, I'm 75 now, and you have to transition out, right? So I'm going to step down here shortly in this company, and we'll get a new CEO, and I'll be on the board. If I don't have quality people, what am I going to do then? And we get really narrow-minded. We think, well, I'll sell it to private equity for big bucks. Okay, at 75 years of age, what would I do with 20 or 30 million dollars if I owned the whole thing, or 50 million, or whatever that would be? Because we'd actually probably get a little bit more than that. I mean, what am I going to spend it on? Is my ego so out of control at this point? I will tell you, getting to work with this fella here is worth more than $1 million to me. And I could say that of most of our branch managers. I had an experience when I was about 10 years old. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and it was pretty hard on the farm. We were stretched for money. And my dad sold a very special breed of hog that he could breed the gilts, a young female, and as a bred gilt, he could get a premium price. And a guy from Texas came to Kansas to buy 2 of those. And as they were loading them, back then you didn't have big trucks, and loading into a little trailer pulled behind a car to take home, Dad thanked him. He said, "This means a lot to me because this is how I feed my kids." And I'm sure he looked at my father, who had the same name as mine, Larry, and saw that it was kind of poverty. And he said, "Larry, don't you get it? Each one of those kids is worth $1 million. How do you put a price on a great associate you get to work with? I mean, if they were my kids, I'd be the happiest guy in the world, right?" So that led to the mental thinking, that and Catholic social teaching that says we have to be benevolent owners. It cannot be just about us. Those two things came together and said, this is what we've got to do. I didn't know what an ESOP was, and it was somewhat new when we set it up. But so maybe it's fortuitous, but that all led to where we are today, Luke.
Wow. All right, so Jason, my question then to follow that up is for you. We were talking before this podcast started, and you've been here for 20 plus years.
25 years.
That does not happen in the green industry in most cases and in most companies. And so I want to just kind of pick your brain on, obviously 25 years here is a long time. So talk to me about your experience here and what's kept you here at, the company as long as you've moved up. I'm sure you haven't started as the branch manager from day one. So talk to me about your experience being an employee of a company that's an ESOP.
Yeah, the ESOP wasn't a big driver to me in the beginning, to be honest with you, because you're young. I mean, you think about 401k. Is that a driver for people right now? No, because it's a retirement. So it wasn't a big driver. It was just about what Larry talks about, his dream, his vision, meeting Larry and his passion. It just oozes through him and what he wanted to do with the company. And so it was an opportunity for us to move to Kansas City, start working there. Again, I started out as a turf route manager. I knew Larry had a vision to bring a branch to Oklahoma, and I wanted to be part of that, and it worked out that we were able to do that. But what brought me to Ryan's, again, the ESOP, now that I see the value of it, and that's why we're trying to educate people now early on, and that it is such a big deal. And we tell people all the time that Larry has a passion for this industry. He wants to grow the industry. He wants to take it to another level. And by doing that, what he talks about, investing in his people. And he tells me all the time, recruit and hire, the best talent, the same message over and over again. So that's what has kept me here, the vision, the caring for the people, the serving God, the honoring God through our work and through the community, things like that. That's what has kept me.
That's good. So recruit and hire. I'm guessing, you correct me if I'm wrong, is it something that you were constantly looking for people even when you're not?
Yes, have to be. Or Larry will be say, get back to the basics, recruit and hire. We were just, before this podcast, we were in there doing an interview, a guy from Stephen F. Austin. So we need to be always looking. Do we get focused on other things and get our eyes off other things? Yes, but we have to always be recruiting and hiring.
How important is it to you to continuously be finding the right people? Because, I think in the industry, there's other industries outside of the green industry that do a really good job at hiring and recruiting. And I think that this is something that the green industry really needs to continue to adapt and grow and learn from other people outside of the industry and from leaders like you guys here. Because when I hear about it, it's always the person's already out the door Now we need to start recruiting. And so when you have that flipped mindset of, in my opinion, almost as you should be as hardworking at finding the right employees as you are finding the right customers. And in an ideal world, you're never not marketing for new customers. So you should never not be not marketing for new employees.
The lesson I learned on that was 40 years ago. I was sitting around a table. I had a agriculture, forestry degree, but I spent almost 10 years in restaurants. And my old boss drug me to a seminar by a company called Selection Research. And we learned how to hire. Gallup owns the program today, Strength Finders. But he asked us what our number one priority was at our level. We were area managers for restaurants, and we gave him the rate of us 8 different number one priorities. I've told this story dozens of times. And he looked at us and he said, guys, until recruiting, hiring, and keeping great people, not people, great people becomes your number one priority, those of you who don't do that will never have a consistent number 2 priority. We paid a lot of money to hear that and the things that went with it. And I didn't have that money. I mean, I think everything was a stretch for me. And I said, I'm going to get blood out of this turnip. I'm going to do that. I really think if the program would have been free, I would have ignored it. But, you know, I'm not into college sports or professional sports, but that's exactly what they do. And so that's been our mantra now for 40 years. And I think it's why our company is unique, is because we have an incredible amount of very good talent. The fellow that he interviewed today was a 3.99 GPA. And we need some of those extremely bright people because they just process faster. But you also need the ones that have the right attitude to go with it. There are very smart people sometimes that are very self-centered. We don't need that because we're a team. And that has changed us and made us what we are, Luke.
Wow.
You're never better than your people. And if we can give up and let other people do the job, he runs this branch, I don't. If we can let them do the job, maybe we'll coach, but the coaching goes both ways. So that's where we are.
Wow, that's good. And before this podcast, I heard a lot of we, not I. And, you know, it's very easy to pick up the humility that, you know, really the whole organization has. It's very potent that it's a team environment and it's not, hey, look what I've done, it's look what we've done. And that's not common in business owners a lot of times. It's a lot of me, I, look what I've built. And a lot of times it's not. It's the people that are around you that have really been the ones putting in the hard work and the effort and the ones that really move the mission of the company forward. On the thought of employees and hiring and recruiting, what do you think, what was one of the biggest lessons you've learned? Maybe one of the hardest moments when it came to hiring and recruiting? Could be in any aspect. Maybe it was a person you had to let go. Maybe it was a lesson learned hiring that didn't work out, or a person that you wish that would have worked out. Maybe you let them get away. Is there anything that comes to mind? The biggest
Yes,
learned?
I can't change people. I can't change people. And I remember when I was running restaurants, I thought I would hire somebody and teach them to be good at customer service. And Selection Research, their point was if they don't smile naturally, you will never make them a great smiler.
Wow.
And I thought I could do that. I literally did. But they said the most thanked thing in America is the cash register. Why? When you come to pay for your order, the introvert that doesn't know how to smile will thank the cash register. He won't look at you. He'll look down at the cash register and say thanks because he knows he has to. Well, the cash register didn't buy that meal. The extrovert will look at you and say thank you. When we drove to Tulsa yesterday, we stopped at a small town restaurant. The lady was half good. And I mean that, half good. Half of her job she did really well. She wasn't trained that when she was talking with 2 friends for 10 minutes while we're waiting to get our order, she needed to turn around and see that we were ready to order. She did the same thing at the end. When she interacted with us, she was quite good. I thought, isn't it a shame that this owner is not on the floor with her long enough to point that out? We always said you have to have eyes in the back of your head when you're in that business. Well, it's really true in our business too. One of our managers in Kansas City said one of his things that really hurts him today is our guys that'll wear the earbuds today, and they'll go through the yard listening to something, a podcast or something, when they should be focusing with their eyes on the trees, the flowers, the shrubs, etc., and finding things in that note to write to the customers. So I think it's good he pointed that out. Now we need to start writing with our guys, don't we, and say, are we actually doing what we think they're doing, what we would like them to be doing? Because oftentimes people want to do a great job. And Jason can address this better than I can, but they want to do a great job. And we have to ask, are they doing that great job?
Yeah, I mean, so you're dealing with people, so you're going to have the good, the bad, just like a family dynamic. You have dysfunction at times, but you get all the above. But just dealing with people, you get the good, the bad. It's challenging. Hiring great people, finding great people, retaining great people. It's difficult. That's why they think about the NFL and the amount of money that they put in studying people and all the interviews and all the things that they do and how much they miss on people. Why does a Patrick Mahomes get drafted 9 places down than a Mitch Trubisky? How does that happen? So it's not easy. If there was a perfect science and we would all have the best companies and the best people and never any problems, but that's not reality. So
And reality is, he just said something really important. It's difficult. We ought to have a big whiteboard. It's called the difficult board. And everything that's difficult, write it down. And that's what we ought to focus on. You'll be mediocre if you do things that are easy. And it's only when we face and solve difficult issues that we go from mediocre and average to start getting good and great. So he hit a really good point. He follows that. I didn't know who this other, I guess, quarterback was, you say?
yeah, they got picked. They had check, make sure, but I think it was Trubisky. But yeah,
I don't know.
Mahomes wasn't the first player picked that year. So how does that happen?
Yeah.
But it's difficult. My point is, it's very difficult, and there's no crystal ball to say, hey, this guy or this girl is going to be the best. So it's challenging.
Well, and it's interesting too, to that point where you find somebody that you think is the A player, the top draft, the best pick, and then doesn't end up working out as well, and then you have somebody that's the 9th draft or whatever he ended up being, who now has almost more Super Bowl rings than most other quarterbacks in the NFL. So it's interesting to see how I think a lot of it comes down to the organization, the leaders, the team. You look at some of the football teams that have won most consistently back-to-back years, and that's not a mistake. You look at the Dallas Cowboys, they might look really good on paper, but then continuously miss, and there's a reason. Where you then look at somebody like the Chiefs or any of the other, teams that have consistently won, and a lot of that comes back down to the management and the coaching and the putting the right butts in the right seats.
A great player doesn't make a great coach, does it? We hire a lot of people with horticulture and forestry degrees, ag degrees, but a degree doesn't make you a leader. And most, I don't know the statistic, but probably 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 people have a gift to lead. Bill Cowher, that was Pittsburgh. Okay, he was defensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, and I used to fertilize his yard. His wife's name was Kay. So I'd be fertilizing the yard, and she was very communicative, great lady, fun to be with, etc. Bill was very introverted, shy. It's kind of hard to speak to me, but he would. He was kind of all shucks type of guy. But he's on TV now. Okay, he's morphed into the next level. Most people can't do that. You keep weeding out. Well, we need some of those people that can be promoted into branch manager, into a great salesman. Probably where our industry is lacking today is really quality professional sales, not trying to shove it down somebody's throat, but really filling a need, find a need and fill it. I guess I heard one time is the definition of sales, but they do that in a way where they add value to that customer's property. It's an interesting industry, and that I say that what we're about is creating beauty and safety. Beauty, whether it's turf or trees or creating a landscape or whatever, we want to leave that property and a city more beautiful when we're done. But what we're saying now is, if it doesn't start in the heart of our people, then it doesn't turn out beautiful. I just went to a park yesterday that he was telling me about, this great here in Tulsa called the Gathering Place. It's probably one of the most outstanding parks that I've ever been in, because the architecture, the landscape design, etc., was just so magnificent. Okay. A lot of people just walk through that and say it's nice. But once you show them the difficulty they had in creating those designs of laying the wood, the stone, etc., into the way they did, and even the way the sunlight in the evening and the morning kind of cast shadows and stuff, you say, wait a minute, I never thought that beauty is all of those things. So we have to teach our customers in the spring when all the plants are coming up and birthing from the earth, how that is amazing, or in the fall or early winter when that fresh snow lays on them and, the grasses with the fronds on top, and how they just have spectacular appearance when the sun's coming through it. We need to be telling those stories to our customers so they see it. Once we get excited about it, it's different. We have a different attitude with our clients, and I think even with the community.
You talk about leadership as a gift. Do you think that leadership is trainable, or do you think that it's starts with some underlying knowledge or inclination of what leadership is, and then you can nurture that along, or do you think that you can become a leader if you're not a very good leader now?
Both. I've always said, and I'm really open about this, I'm not a great leader. A pretty good vision of where we're going. He's probably a much better leader than I'll ever be. I grew up with a lot of insecurities. They drive me. I'm very motivated. Behind every weakness, there's a strength, and we have to see that in ourselves. There was an inscription over the entrance to Harvard. I'd heard this years ago, and I think it's Socrates, but it says, know thyself. I asked a young man the other day, I said, do you see yourself as a leader? He said, I think so. Why? And he told me several things. And I said, how do you feel about yourself? Are you comfortable with yourself, or insecurities, et cetera? He said, I'm pretty comfortable with who I am. And I didn't see arrogance comfortable, but I saw genuine comfortable. And probably he has that. People like me can have a chip on their shoulder and want to pull people down to where they think it's building themselves up. And that doesn't build people up. I can't rob from who he is, his self-worth, to build me up. That's fake. Humility is truth, right? And we have to live a truthful life with ourselves. We have to know it. That's one of Jason's gifts, I think, is you seem comfortable with yourself. I mean, it's a hard job, isn't it?
Sure, absolutely.
It took me a long time to realize you're never better than your people. And we have to hire good people. And that's why that hunt has to be. I mean, it's like my dad, growing up with 10 kids, we worked really hard just to get by. And he would say it was like killing snakes. And I think that's how we have to do a lot of things. Like you're killing snakes. Like, if I don't get this done today, it sounds crazy. But there has to be a high motivation level. You have anything to add to that, Jason?
We talk a lot about Ryan's about servant leadership. That's what kind of leaders we want to be. We want to be servants to each other, our customers. And so when you think about that as a leader, putting other people first, not being the boss or the whatever, the arrogance that Larry talks about so much, serving one another. It makes leadership more simple, I think, in my mind. Think about you're not trying to solve every problem. You're trying to work as a team to solve problems, and you're just trying to facilitate that. But your main goal is to serve one another and serve each other. So is it inherent leadership? Yes, but it can be learned. Also, yes, absolutely. I think so.
A great role model helps so much. When, our industry, probably a lot of us didn't stand out in school. Now, I'm old enough, they didn't know what ADD or ADHD was. They just say you're goofy. But we probably were a high energy person. A lot of males fit that. We can't sit very long. And so they said, oh, we got to drug you today, Ritalin or whatever. When we're going to learn a different way. But you take any of us and put a tool in our hands, we come alive. We think just fine. And our minds are going, and we're thinking, what's the next move, the next cut, whatever it is we need to do. We're looking across the field. We're looking for weeds. We're looking for opportunity. And the accountant type person may not do that job nearly as well as we do. There's a special place God has made for everybody. We need to find those special people that fit us. The young, bright fellow that we interviewed today, he said, he really likes it in the field. And he said, I worked my tail off. He said, I've always led. He said, even in class, I'd find out real quick the people weren't motivated to do a perfect job. He said, come on, look, this is what we do. And he said, I'd find myself taking over. Because to him, that perfect job was real important. Remind me of Pete Fire-Robin. Yeah. So, we need those sort of people. And yes, it can be taught, but yes, you have to have you cannot change personalities. You are set. So I learned that.
And we tell people all the time, you don't have to have a title behind your name to be a leader.
Or to be important.
Yeah, or to be important. Yeah, absolutely. But do you even lead when you're out there with a little crew and just notice things and help each other out and step up when the time allows it to do so?
And Jason, let's build on that a little bit, because he started in turf. And turf is where we started the whole company, doing turf applications, not mowing, but we did applications because they're renewable. We can run more dollars per man hour than you can mowing. And so we built it out that way. Plus, it creates a customer base that's renewable, that if our person is the right person, they can sell and see opportunities, create opportunities and solutions for those, which is really sales. So we took that job to another level. In the industry, they call them turf techs. And I would have other business owners come to, and you find an applicator. We don't use applicators. We have turf managers. They manage that customer's property. And it's a very different job. When they said applicator, then it's somebody that I can say, here, take the spreader, 2 bags of fertilizer, go do the job. Come back when you're done, or 20 bags, whatever it is. Don't come back till you're done. Don't talk to anybody, just get it done and come back. That is not who we are. Our people are like horticulture extension agents. They're looking around, they're saying, you got a tree that needs some pruning, we could raise the tree up, get some light under here for the grass, and on and on. And they come back and they know they've made a difference in people's lives. Okay, we hired a young man 2 years ago that came from a Christian bookstore. And the guy said, oh, look, he's got soft hands. He'll never make it here. And he came into the irrigation department. And literally, there were a lot of us probably that had some doubts with him. So this summer, we were at his branch, and I was talking with this, Garrett, do you like your job? No. He said, I love my job. Why? He said, Larry, the people that I work with here are good at what they do. He said, I have so much to learn. So I find a new problem, I'll call one of them up. They almost always take the call if they can. I said, here's what I'm faced with. Oh, here's how you do it, Garrett. Boom, 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 boom. He said, every day I'm smarter. Every day I get to solve things for customers. They have my own personal cell, or company cell, but it's his. Garrett, I've got a problem. Will you come and help me? He said, Larry, I'm important. Does our industry do? No, because I want to be the important. I don't let Jason share that. You think he wants to work for me very long? It is incredible when you give up the importance and share it. In our company, we, in every company, what you call the top managers, we call them bottom, but it's C-suite. So guys, let's call it the S-suite. Let's be the servant suite. They picked up on that. Wow. I don't know if we always live it, but we've picked up on that. Jason, you make a great point. We have to be servant leaders, or we're never. We want to see our company grow large and be a good role model company for others. That's part of, Luke, why we're in this, or why, as an old man, I haven't totally quit yet. So if I could just roam around and encourage these guys, I'm going to be a happy camper, because they make you feel good being around them.
In the relationships we build with the customers, they don't know Larry Ryan, to be honest.
They don't care.
They don't know. Sometimes they don't even remember that Ryan name, but they do know a Devin or a Holden or a Robbie. That's who Ryan is to them. Those relationships that we build, the guys that are stepping on their properties and caring for them and building those relationships, that's who Ryan is to them.
And he mentioned Devin and Holden and Robbie. I know those three somewhat, a little bit more than, okay, we're 250 miles away from them, but I've spent time with them. If you know their story, they're amazing people. We have to know the story of our people. A lot of people, their employees, they don't care about. I got exposed when I was working with selection research to a formula that's interesting. And it's profits equal talent plus relationship, in parentheses, times expectations. And I say, if you're a government organization, call it productivity. But you'll never be more profitable than the talent you hire, the relationship you have with those people, and add those two together, times your expectations. Bill Cowher was a great coach after he left Kansas City at the Pittsburgh White, because he hired well and he had great expectations. He was a great coach. He told them what they had to do. They did it, and they won a couple of Super Bowls, right? So we have people, why would I have expectations of somebody because they don't stay here long enough? Well, who are you hiring? Or I don't have a relationship because I don't like that guy. Well, then why'd you hire him? You think about it. If you hired people like your children, wouldn't you have a different level of hiring? Yeah, but I don't want to pay them that much. Well, it's short-sighted. You get what you pay for.
That's true. I just want to jump in really quick and just say that, you made a good point that people don't know the brand necessarily as they do the person that's on the property. And I think that's one of the key things that I've seen. That is what makes the 500 employee companies different than the guy that's running 5 crews, 5 guys, whatever. There may be that it is there's a correlation. They're there because of the owner that is directly overseeing things, but he never gives enough responsibility or training or leeway to the guys to be able to take that on and make it their own. And then they stay stuck at that size because of that. And it's not so much about the brand as it is about that experience, because they're not having the experience with the brand per se as they are with the individual face-to-face people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And that if you're not diving in and building up that person to be able to give that experience to the customer, you're going to stay small.
Luke, you made a really good point there. There was a selection research question. They broke us out into 34 different talents, but one of them was on responsibility. Are you a responsible person? And the question you ask on that one is, how do I get a person to be more responsible? The answer is simple. You give them responsibility, and then you measure how well they achieve it. And you let them know when they don't. But the more they do, the more responsibility you give them, the more responsible they become. And we tell people that our young men that join us that are single, they go to a next level when they get married. But then they take a 3-level increase when they have their first baby. And then you look at that little child, and Jason has 3 of them, you could hold it in your hand, and you say, if I don't take care of this child, it's going to die. I have to be responsible. They start growing up very fast. They take a different attitude with the clients, a different attitude with their coworkers, with everybody, because now they realize what it is to truly be a responsible adult.
To empower them also. You empower the employees to do their best and that responsibility. Say, hey, I'm going to be right here with you. If you may make a mistake, we're going to figure it out together. But I'm going to empower you to do your job, do it well. And that makes a big difference.
I walked into this shop, Jason's shop, or his team's shop this morning, and it was raining outside. I said, guys, this shop is clean. He empowered them. Guys, when we have a down day, I want it clean. And, we work enough that sometimes it's hard to get a broom every day, et cetera. But one of the guys said, we have our new people do the sweeping every morning while we're filling our trucks. Well, whatever. But he lives that. So very proud of him.
How do you judge or determine if somebody's going to become a good leader? When you're doing the interview process and you're looking for potential leaders or already leaders, how do you gauge that? Because I think that there's a level of smoke and mirrors that people can potentially put up in the interview process. Have you found a way to be able to gauge somebody on their leadership level before you actually pull the trigger on hiring them, or is it just a gut thing?
That's difficult. It really is. It's so, one thing that we do, we have a ride-along process that we'll take a potential candidate out and kind of not only interview them in the conference room, we'll take them out and ride along with the turf manager, or go out with the pruning crew, or whatever respective discipline they're looking to on board with us. We'll take them out so they can see the job, kind of interact with our crew, our teams, and we could ask them more, kind of the interview process. You get to know them on a little bit deeper level, even that small amount of time, because it breaks kind of down the barriers of a conference room, things like that. So that does help. And we've had great success with that, but it's difficult. Like I said, just hiring people and finding that, and you use your gut, you use all the things, prayer, all your tools to find those great people. But it's difficult in the small amount of time that you are interviewing, whether they're going to be who they say they are, because it is smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. So it is difficult, but we do the best job that we can with the tools that we have and the resources.
And I'll add to that, because one of the things that we say is personalities are patterns of repetitive behavior. You are who you are. And so we look for people that started leading young. And we try to set them at ease enough. And I think you did a really good job today in the interview with that young man, but we try to set them at ease enough that we know they're talking with a genuine, that they're just being genuine in their presentation. You can kind of read when people are faking it and trying to puff themselves up. I would say the young man today has some leadership skills. Now, will he be How much we don't know. But everybody we hire, we're looking for that. And we're hitting on enough that we're getting the leaders we need. I would like to get more. I think a little bit of that is because of the way we word our ads. We aren't saying that this is a job where you can grow and take other positions, move to other branches, etc. We need to start doing that. But remember that personalities are patterns of repetitive behavior. I'm almost always going to become what I have been. I will build it out.
You said something, Jason, earlier that I think is very important, because there's almost like a mentality with most companies. I think this is outside of our industry, but especially within our industry, where employees are waiting for a mistake to happen and then the ball and hammers comes down. And you said something earlier that was interesting, on the point that you allow them to make mistakes and then you use that as a coaching experience, which I think is different than most people. One, they don't give employees the opportunity to make mistakes. They micromanage the heck out of them so that they don't, or that they hope that they don't. And then two, they don't take that experience and they turn that into a coaching perspective. They just said, this is what you shouldn't do, this blah, 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 and they just drill it down their throat. How important is that in the culture, and the ability for people to have, in my opinion, the confidence to make decisions? Because we need people to make decisions, whether they're the right decisions or the wrong decisions. We need people to make decisions in the company. Otherwise, everything's going to revolve around a few individuals, and then you get bottlenecked. How important is that? And kind of talk me through what your mentality is when it comes to giving people enough of the leash, but not too much leash, maybe. The coaching experience around that. What is your
Yeah, it's like
process?
like Larry talked about. You give them responsibilities, and as they go with that, you give them a little bit more, and then again, they're going to make mistakes. We've all made mistakes, so we have to remember how somebody treated us when we made a mistake. Do we want to get beat over the head, or do we want somebody to come alongside us and help us along the way? And so you try to model that, and that's how I've been modeled with Larry's and the other managers that I've worked with also. So you want more responsibility, we'll give you more responsibility, and as they are able to handle that, you give them a little bit more. As they make mistakes or have questions, you're right there with them along. You try to give them the tools, the training, the resources to help them make those decisions on their own. And then when they need help, you're right there alongside them, working with them and helping them along, being that servant leadership that we talked about. But just empower them to make decisions. Like you said, hey, make a decision, and if you make the wrong one, we'll figure out, hey, let's not do that again. We want to coach and teach, and we don't want to keep that pattern of behavior going. But we'll say, hey, what could you have done differently? What would you do differently next time? And when you learn and grow from that.
And I just had an example of that. I really appreciate how you worded that. The other day, of an employee called me on a Sunday afternoon and said, Larry, I did something I should not have done. And it was an indiscretion that he was very embarrassed about. Something a lot of us young men do when we're younger. And he said, it's still not settled yet. I don't know where it's going to go, but he said, I'm terribly sorry I did it, etc. And I think he felt like, that I was going to be really angry or something. I don't know. But he did feel like he let me down. And my comment back to him was, if you saw the list of mistakes I've made in my life, you'd just start laughing, maybe, or whatever. But I said, learn from it. Let's go. I said, these are all opportunities for us to grow up. It took me a lot of years to realize this, but we're all called to live a saintly life, a life of virtue and goodness. And that means I'm to treat him well, you well, etc. I'm not more important than you. He loves all of us the same. We've got to get that into our head. Problem customers are a great example. Some are so tough to work with, and you get so frustrated, but every one of those is teaching us something. Now, we'll get them every now and then that are so nasty that they just run us into the ground. And I think personally, I have terminated 3 or 4 of those in my 38 years here. I mean, called them and asked them to not do business anymore, and they're kind of shocked. But if you don't do that, they degrade your people so badly that they will actually hurt the whole company. I'd much rather have them not working with us anymore until there's small sphere of people they know at that period. But most of them, there's 4 of them. Some of those are so bad that they'll keep you from being your very best. I don't know why. They wake up in the morning and say, whose life can I make miserable today? We have to be lifting people all the time. We'll tolerate tough customers. They make us excellent. I don't mean those. I mean people are just out with a vindictive attitude.
Yeah. So changing gears and kind of moving into the marketing and sales side of things, how important is the brand and sales and marketing to you here at, Ryan Lawn and Tree?
The best marketing book I ever read was Sergio Zeman, who did Coca-Cola's marketing a number of years ago. I'm not wearing a corporate shirt today. I wish I was, but I'm 200 miles from home and didn't bring one. But that logo on his shirt and the guy wearing that logo is your best marketing. And so I think if every one of us that own businesses, run businesses, whatever, realized that what we're really hiring when we hire a person is a marketing person, an HR person, and we can keep going from there. A bit of an accounting person. We want people that put up good numbers. Marketing, that people grow the business. That when I talk with the customer, I show my passion for what I do. And it's not, my passion is not to make Ryan rich, the company Ryan. My passion is to create a beautiful yard for you, Mrs. Jones, Betty, whatever it is. And when they really realize after a couple of visits that I'm sincere about that, when I started the business, you go through trends with your trade magazines, and 35 years ago, the magazines had lots of stories on how to reduce service calls because they cost you a lot of money, and they do. They're the greatest marketing tool you have, because if you show up with that service call very quickly with an attitude that I'm going to fix this, you make a customer for a long period of time. And I didn't ever tell that to people early on. Probably was a little bit selfish, but I realized those articles were narrow-minded. We literally made raving fans out of people that thought we left weeds in their yards, or we missed something, or whatever the or was. You show up, and I set a policy, because I was a one-man show for 2 years with 600 accounts, that I would be there first thing the next morning, get all the bids and all the service calls done first thing, and then I can have the rest of the day where I could focus on the yards and just get work done as fast as I could, but doing it well. And they were amazed. I said, look, you're that important. I was doing it to be efficient. They thought I was doing it because I put them at the top of the list. So I thought, oh my gosh, we need to always do it so the customer thinks we're putting it at the top of the list. And we really are, but we're doing it also so that we can have a clear mind and not get confused and all that stuff, things I have problems with. So you learn something from necessity sometimes, don't you?
I don't have much to add on. I mean, you covered it really well, but like I said, the branding of the clean red trucks was that person behind this that's doing that. Like I said, the boots on the ground, the people that are serving the customers, the face of Ryan. That's their best market.
I know what you can add. Communication is so important, right? You're a very good communicator, so is he. We started Toastmasters early on inside of the company. I was 30 years old when a friend drugged me to a Toastmasters club. I said, Raj, what is this club? He said, Larry, we give speeches. I just turned white. And very few things in life frightened me as much as giving a speech. And I hung on to that lectern and told who I was, etc. And 8 years of giving talk after talk, and because I was so frightened, remember, a weakness can be a strength. I would practice my presentations 30 or 40 times. We had just adopted 2 kids, and we had a house with a carport. I'd be out in that carport practicing my talk, and the kids say, Mom, what's Dad doing? She said, he's going to do a speech. She didn't tell him he was scared to death. And I found about 20 practices in, I'd say, this is a dumb talk, and I would change it. Very seldom did I ever give the presentation I thought I was going to give when I started, but you refine it, right? And I would solve the problem. I found that when you intensely focus on something, you can solve a lot of things you don't think you have the brain power to solve. So 2 things happened there. I became very comfortable talking in front of a group. A lot of the people we hired early on were from presentations to a horticulture class at a college. I said, oh, maybe this guy's got something. And they would knock on our door, give us a call, whatever, send in an application. We hired those folks. It became a boom. Well, when we asked our people to do it in-house, the first year they hate you. Second year they tolerate you. And the third year they've done a 30-minute training to to the company, people, etc., and they don't go, oh, shut, they say opening body conclusion. I'm telling them what I tell them. I tell them, and I tell them what I told them. And they make a nice presentation, and they are so proud of themselves when they're done. Well, tell me another company that cares enough about people that'll make them do things they don't want to do. I love sayings you get from coaches, and I think it was the Dallas Cowboys coach, Tom Landry, that said, a coach is somebody that makes you do what you don't want to do so you become what you want to become. We're in people growing business, and it's really important to us, Luke.
People growing business.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
And we have some good communicators, don't we, Jason?
We do, yeah.
One of them, Matt Evans, oh my gosh, he started in plant healthcare and trees. I'd see Matt in there. We talked to a garden club. No, it's a home association. He said, Larry, I don't know what to say. Go ahead and take. So it was a high-end group of people. So I took the lead. We got done. He said, Larry, I could do that. But when he was asked to give a talk, you'd see him on a Saturday morning, his day off, practicing 5, 10, 15 times. And Matt is one of our best presenters in the whole company today.
Wow.
He has the brain power to do it. He does a podcast we'll have to send you sometime, and they're amazing.
Larry claims that Toastmasters has transformed the company. I don't know if we should give it that much credit, but it has.
That and you're hiring, Jason.
It has been very powerful. And like you said, the first year you got almost a mutiny on your hands, Luke. But
No, I had people going to quit early on, so I didn't do it for a couple more years.
yeah. So,
That's true.
but
I thought they were going to walk off.
it is very beneficial, though, for sure.
You don't scare people to death. You go ahead and say, okay, I just want you to take 5 minutes to tell everybody about you. That's your first presentation. Well, we can talk easily about things that we're an expert in. Most of us are experts in ourselves, right? And that's the icebreaker Toastmaster. And the next talk they say, just give a 5 to 7 minute talk on, I think it's arrange the talk. And the third one is, and fourth one is. That manual has 10 speeches in the beginning manual. When you get done with the 10th one, you'll have some level of proficiency. It's a big deal.
Communication, I think, is the number one thing that is going to make you or break you moving forward, I think.
Yes.
Because-
And listening is a big part of that, Luke.
That's probably the biggest part.
Yes, I would agree.
Receiving the information and then being able to communicate a response back, processing that information and that stuff. One of the things I think is going to be really interesting in the next 10 years, 20 years is the difference in how society is going to be with what a lot of people call the iPad kid. Now moving into society and I think communication is something that's going to be a lost art to some extent. And
It is trainable, though. And I just heard a talk on that at a employee ownership talk that was very interesting. It was a guy talking about AI, artificial intelligence, and he said the thing that we have to recognize, and it's very important for me at my age to recognize, he said, your kids are smarter than you. And so they'll bring a gift to work that we don't have. We can teach communication, and it'll be a struggle, but we can teach it. Second, I forgot. The second, how to work hard. Those are learnable things. If the manager works hard, you'll work hard. If the manager sits and tells you to work hard, you won't. You'll go out as soon as he's not watching, you won't. So it's really leadership. I think that you're going to overcome that. I'm too old, but I really think every generation brought a problem that when it was solved, lifts society, if that makes sense. I think you are going to solve that problem and do it very well.
it's going to be interesting. It's
a good way to answer it.
The way that everything's moving so quickly now with AI,
It is.
technology, and for the first time, I think, ever, we're really seeing a real use case for robotics and mowers that are actually able to autonomously go out and service properties, maybe not at the level that we wish that they would yet, but I think that is very, very close to becoming a real world use case. And so it's interesting to see in 10 years from now when we're looking back at this podcast and the world is a completely different place that we know it.
Where's that old guy? He's dead. The rest of us are.
I think he's Louise.
I'm not one bit worried either way. Yeah, and we have to laugh, don't we? As we solve these problems, we have to bring a degree of humility and joy with it and laughing with you guys. You talked about communication listening. The way you ask questions, I can tell you're a good listener. And so you'll be a good leader in teaching that.
I hope so.
You will.
I've not always been a great leader. I've got my own horror stories when it comes to management and stuff like that. But I used all of those moments where most people would say people are terrible as actually it was me that was terrible. And the people left because of bad leadership.
We tend to find the faults that are ours in other people, don't we? Yeah,
Good.
I've been very good at that.
As we wrap this up, for those that are listening to this or watching this that are working for another company or they're working, a job that they hate and they're thinking about getting into the lawn and landscape business for the first time, or maybe they've just recently started in the lawn and landscape business, what would be something you would tell yourself if you could go back 40 years or 37 years, 38 years now and tell your early self starting the company? What would you tell that person now knowing what you know?
I talked with a young man in a small town a year ago who was really struggling. And he belonged to one of these groups where they give you counsel. Excuse me. And he was told, excuse me, to step back and work on your business, not in it. He was going broke. And I don't consider myself a consultant or anything like that, but you do make mistakes and you do learn from it, don't you? And he was too small to work on the business. And the amount of money that he was losing every year was about the amount of money that his salary and the other person who was in the office salary, and they both should have been in the field. I said, you can work on your business while you're doing work. The beautiful thing about fertilizing a yard or mowing or pruning trees is what do you think about when you're doing that work? You can think about the party Saturday night, or I always thought about the next hire I was working on, or the newsletter that I was writing for customers, or how I was going to recruit this great guy from Oklahoma State to join us, or whatever it was. And I think that is really poor advice to tell people when they're small to work on it. And really, I think most people want to get out of the field work, even if they like it, because they think it's not important. I worked in the field every day until we hit about $4 million in revenue. And I will tell you, I should have stayed there longer because I used to do newsletters at night, interviewing at night, Saturday mornings, whatever, Sundays. I know it's Lord's Day, but I didn't consider that work. That was kind of fun, interviewing people, but it really helped us to build the foundation. Plus, like Jason's done every job here in Tulsa that they do it. I did the same thing. And when somebody's bluffing you and say, oh, gee, that's all I could get done today. No, you could have done more than that. You could have done it well. I know, I've done it. And then you got to go ride with that guy a bit and find out either he's the wrong person or he's pulling wool over your eyes or he's just not trained. So you've got to work on it. You've got to work hard. And this work-life balance, that just drives me nuts. Because that's great. If you're smart, you're white, you've got that accounting degree, marketing degree, whatever, you put in your 40 hours, I've got to have balance. When you start a company, if you're worried about work-life balance, you either have a lot of money that's padded down here or you're in IT or something like that. Because we had to work those Saturdays. We just treated Saturdays another day. And there were a lot of times Sunday I worked too because I'd go out and do the bids to keep us pruning the next week on Sunday or do the service calls, whatever it was. Okay. Then in the winter, I did not go to football games and stuff like that. When I had time off, it was with my family. Dinner was always with my family. I mean, you cannot neglect your family, but I'm just amazed the guys that think they got to go out and get their time with their buddies. Your family's priority, your work is priority, or my faith is priority, and then everything else was just wiped off the slate. So there was no balance, what people would call balance, but we got the job done.
What's interesting about that is you pretty much contradicted everything that the gurus and the coaches and everybody that will, try to tell you something will tell you. And it's the opposite of work-life balance, I think, is a myth, or it's this thing that people talk about, but I really don't know of the people that I look at that are truly successful. And I would consider this a true success. They don't know what work-life balance is, because I think this is what it comes down to. It's very obvious that you greatly appreciate and love what you do.
Love
I
the
think
people.
that changes the work-life balance thing. When you hate doing whatever you're doing, when you tell somebody you gotta have, you work-life balance is not a thing, they go, "What? I don't know how I'm gonna do that."
Get over it.
But when you truly love what you do, and there's at least somewhat of a passion there, if you have real goals, I don't think work-life balance plays into that.
It's just a non-entity. And yes, you need time for yourself. Yes, you need time for your family. I am not saying neglect a family. My wife Kathy and I had just adopted 2 kids right before we started the company, and I wonder would they have been different. They were older kids that had been abused. Had I spent more time with them, but I was always with them with meals. My son Tom and I spent a lot of time fishing together, because you can go fishing with a little kid for 30 minutes in the evening, and that's all they want. And they're thrilled, and we did stuff like that. We've taken them on vacations all over. My free time was their time. It wasn't doing anything else. So faith, family, work, and you just got to love it. Probably I like doing that better than what I'm doing now. I've said, and I'm not trying to run it in the ground or pour me or anything like that, but I'm not a great leader. And it was really hard for me to have those relationship conversations with people where they weren't doing their job well. That was not my gift. I told one of the guys once, I said, I am so sorry the way I led. I said, my way was, I'm out the door, keep up. That was Andy Green. And Andy said, Harry, we figured you out. And we didn't want to disappoint you. And we tried to keep up, and we learned from you. And then quickly I was learning from them. They taught me things that were, learning isn't always from top down, is it, Jason? You're Robbie and Ronnie and all these great people you have. They're teaching you all the time too. Look, even telling the story like you're interviewing us. If you could interview everybody in every company, they would be a better company when they were done, because they start thinking about their story. My brother-in-law was getting his master's degree, and they needed his little team in that master's program needed a company to do a marketing thing for, and he said, "Can we use your company?" They taught me so much working through that process. It was about the second year of business, or maybe third. I thought, oh my gosh, what a blessing it is to help somebody else, because they helped me tremendously in return.
You say something, the passion that it starts there. You got to have the passion for what you're doing, and that shows through to your customers, to everybody you interact with. And one thing that Larry has done extremely well with, and has passed it down, and we do it sometimes really good, and sometimes meet friends in the industry, make friends in the industry. I think that's extremely important.
Get to know all the people in your town that are in your. Say hi to them at the convenience store. Say hi to them every chance you get. Ask them how they're doing. Encourage them, not with the idea that I'm going to rob them, but it was interesting, because a company that I met at one of the trade shows in Kansas City almost 40 years ago, probably second or third year in business. A couple of years ago, I was going through the directory of everybody in the Turf Association in the state, and their name popped up. And I just called them and talked to Lori. What are you guys' plans? Well, Marty's thinking he turns 65 this year. He'd like to retire. I said, well, what are you going to do with the business? Well, we don't know. We need to find somebody to buy it. I said, I would sure love to talk with you. She works for us today. Marty retired a year ago. They got a nice price for their business, but they had nice customers. It was a quality business. And 35 years it took to develop that. Well, I think if we had that attitude, if I would have been more focused and got some of the stupidness out of my life that I was wasting time with, we'd be twice as big today as we are. And I'd been a better leader, Jason.
You done all right, Larry.
Well, it's because of you.
Thanks. Anything else we want to touch on that we haven't already talked about that you feel like somebody needs to hear?
Well, I think the mission of our industry, and we talked about this before we started, is we create beauty in communities and safety. In tree care, that really fits. You raise trees up, clean them out, they look nicer. Sometimes you remove one that's in the wrong place. But safety, I remove the broken branch or the unsafe branch, the bad crotch. We've seen enough ice storms now. We know where trees will fail. The really long limbs, maybe we'll bring them back, because in heavy snow, ice, when leaves are on them, they fail. Raising them up so grass can grow underneath, so we're creating beauty. and safety. And we teach the customers continually what it is that we're doing, what they should look for, what they need to do. But that beauty needs to start in the heart of every employee that works for us. And if the employee doesn't get that, they don't belong in the industry. Now, that's a learned deal. Give them a little bit of time. They've got to see it in you and see that it's genuine. Luke, if we can do all those things, working with people like you, telling the story, we are going to be a better industry. We're better. The companies in Kansas City are a lot better because we've been very competitive and they wanted to compete with us. We had a funny story, and I'll end with this, but a young man in turf, one of our what we call turf managers, not techs, not specialists, not applicators, they're managers. He joined us because he said his boss was always comparing their company to ours and said, I want to be like Ryan. Okay, so well then why don't I work for Ryan? And he came and joined us. And we weren't trying to. I guess I gave a talk to their company one time, and I've totally forgotten that. But the guy said, that's who I want to be like.
Wow.
Well, the passion showed through. And you'll never hopefully hear me say that I'm great or anything, because I see so much opportunity that we haven't done yet. But what we have done is we've been very passionate about what we do, and we've hired very good people that have done the job well. And oh my gosh, we're so proud and so blessed with that. We give God credit for all of that.
That's good. Jason, you have anything to wrap it up?
No, I think that he said we're blessed. We feel blessed. We do. And we try to serve God through our work and serve each other. And it all starts with our service of God.
That's good. One of the biggest things I noticed, and this is how I'm going to wrap it up, is when you walk in the front door of the lobby here, there's a big pull-up sign that says, this could be your office. And culture is important when you're growing a business. And the business isn't you. It's you until you grow the team. And if you really want to build something that's meaningful, impactful, you have to build the people. And so that's why we bring you these shows. We hope that you learned something from this and brought some value out of this. And so, guys, until next time, keep cutting grass, keep planting plants. Gentlemen, we thank you for being on the podcast and taking the time to be here. And it's always a pleasure being in your presence.
Luke, it's been a real privilege. And you mentioned culture, and I'll end with John Paul II said, the way to change the world in a good way is it starts with love, but we'll get that through culture. We have to build that culture of love. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you. That's it.